butts.
What's going on with you?
What? What?
You're a mess.
Well, because I said butts?
Yeah, precisely because you said butts.
You said butts.
Games, video 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 games.
It's August 29th, 2012, and join us at PAX for Idle Thumbs Podcast Live Rising, a tribute to fallen astronaut Neil Armstrong. Friday, August 31st at 10:30 a.m. in the Pegasus Theater at the Sheraton Hotel, 3rd floor in Seattle.
This is Idle Thumbs 72, and I'm Chris Reno.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vanneman. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Jake.
Oh, hi.
Jake and I are going to Seattle
I'm
on
also
Thursday.
going to Seattle. Weird, for the same reason you are.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably to go to the Idle Thumbs live show Friday at 10:30 in the Pegasus Theater.
Is this
Where?
the one that's the tribute to fallen astronaut Neil Armstrong?
That was rumored in the Dateline, but it's not confirmed.
Okay. I'm really excited for the panel.
Oh, it just came in. That's totally false.
Oh.
We have 3 different moods for the panel. I'm excited, Jake is optimistic, and Chris is terrified. Mm-hmm. I think that's an accurate assessment.
But
No, it'll be good.
No.
But we are in a room that is probably several times bigger than we have any right being in. So
It's the biggest room I've ever been in.
Yeah, well, it's actually the biggest room.
Oh, really?
yeah, that
just
room
that exists.
you can't actually see to the end of it because of, well, you think it's because of the atmospheric haze, but it's also just the curvature of the Earth.
Oh, my goodness.
It's
Yeah.
also a sensory deprivation chamber. So it's going to be really hard for you to hear us.
But being deprived of your senses will be a personal psychedelic journey of the mind.
Well, when everyone
Yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
gets in there and is
probably
really,
about video games.
when everyone gets in there and is really quiet, it's going to be really awkward because you're just going to hear like every little shuffle and fart. But then when Chris starts playing that guitar,
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah,
Axe.
that's going to be rad.
That will be rad. Cool. Well, gosh.
please do bring your friends.
If not for the architectural wonder that is this room.
Yes.
for a live
To
Idle
hear
Thumbs
some
podcast.
5 idiots talk about video games.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of 5 idiots, now Nick and Steve will be there.
Yeah.
2 idiots to add to our 3, making 5. And which is really exciting because we haven't seen them in a long time. And
some of us saw them at QuakeCon.
Yeah, Sean.
At the Idle Thumbs Live QuakeCon panel, available on our Twitch TV channel.
in Dallas, Texas, USA.
Yeah, please also attend our QuakeCon panel
Space.
if
Yeah.
you have the ability to travel through time. It'll be fun in the past.
It'll be fine.
Anyway, go to
Did Steve talk at all at the QuakeCon panel about his game that he's working on?
I don't think so.
Nope.
Oh, man, I'm going to play it super soon.
It's cool.
Probably in the next 2 days.
Actually, speaking of people we know making games that are cool, Brendan Chung, our buddy who makes 30 Flights of Loving, has published 30 Flights of Loving, and you can buy it on Steam right now for, I think, $4.50 or maybe it's $5.
$4.49.
That might be over now. It might be $5.
It was $4.49 today.
So by the time you hear this, it might not be. But anyway, it's
It might be like $8.
It is
$5 or less than
all-
that on
yeah.
Steam.
It's
And
really great.
It's really, really cool. And the music's not awful.
The music's pretty good.
so-
Also, for the Steam release, it now includes Gravity Bone, which used to be a separate, just straight download from his game. So that basically adds Gravity Bone to your Steam library. And he put a bunch of commentary stuff in. So you can turn on commentary mode, and there's little nodes that pop up text
He didn't
windows.
do that for Gravity Bone, did he?
No,
No,
30 Flights of
yeah,
Loving has commentary and has Gravity Bone bundled in. But that's also notable because if you backed the Kickstarter and got 30 Flights of Loving, your copy also updated to include all that stuff along with your exclusive Goldblum mode.
Yep. So everyone's all set.
So there's a ton of stuff in that game now, which is really cool.
And he's also bringing his new game, Quadrilateral Cowboy, to PAX.
Yep.
And so presumably people will be able to play it, right?
It seems like...
I was asking Jake that today.
It's part of... Brendan is listed as part of the, whatever it's called, the
Indie
Indie Mega Booth.
Booth?
The name Indie Mega Booth makes me sad, but the fact that there is just...
Cool dudes
like
in it.
the back
good.
third of the expo floor is just 10 by 10 booths filled with indie developers, and that sounds awesome.
It's really cool.
But the game that's listed on the Indie Mega Booth site for Blendo is quadrilateral cowboy, which I'm really excited about.
Have you guys played it yet?
Yeah.
Just touched the beginning of it. It's cool.
Oh man, yeah, it's rad.
It is.
We can talk about that maybe actually at
I'd
PAX.
love to talk about that at the panel.
Yeah,
I
let's
think
do
that'd be
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
And see if Steve wants to. I'd like to, if Steve is down to talk about Gone Home, we might be talking about that if Steve's ready to do that. It's really another game I think we're super duper excited about, not just because
We're super excited about only the games our friends make.
and not just because Steve's our pal.
No, I played both of these, like the latest builds of both of these games today, and they were both legitimately exciting to me. Like I'm really proud to know these guys.
Yeah,
So it's cool.
same.
Cool. So that's our just endless pitching of us and our buddies.
Also, if you
today.
see myself or Chris, we'll try to get Jake over there. I don't know if you'd even want to at the International. Come say hi because I'll be really stoked to be.
I don't know how much time I'm going to have to go to
We
that.
should actually, since we're in the plug segment of the Idle Thumbs podcast, sorry, of Idle Thumbs, we should also mention that at PAX, just during the show, Chris will be very likely at the Double Fine booth on the floor for most of the show. Sean and I will be in and out of the Telltale booth. And Sean, you're also on another panel.
I am. I'm on a panel. I think it's at 2:30 on Friday. Any panel I'm on is on Friday. But I'm on a panel hosted by PC Gamer and Evan Lottie talking about just story in games with a motley crew that I'm really excited about. It's Evan, myself, Notch, which is really cool, and Dean Rocket Hall, the creator of DayZ, and then I think a gentleman from BioWare who I don't know.
So you're
by
on a
name.
weird panel.
Yeah,
You're
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's
I'm really
awesome.
because I've actually been walking around in my head for like a week thinking about what my thoughts on story vis-a-vis their games, and it's so different than the type of stuff that you and I make at Telltale. And I'm really excited to actually just be at that panel, if that makes sense, even though I'm up there. Like I'm really I'm excited to be able to ask a bunch of questions, which will probably just drive Evan nuts. And I'm really looking forward to that one. So, but you're only weird. PC Gamer's only allowing people who came to the Idle Thumbs panel to get into that one. So you have
if you
to
want
come
to go to a
both.
panel with Sean and Notch,
You'll be
gotta
getting
go
a
to that
special.
Idle
You'll get to be getting a special wristband that'll allow you entrance into the PC Gamer panel with Notch, myself, Dean Rocket Hall, and I believe a gentleman from BioWare.
It's actually worth pointing out right now that this episode, we all have a really crazy week. Like we're going to PAX, we're working on some Idle Thumbs web stuff. So this episode is probably a little funky. If for some weird reason this is your first time listening to Idle Thumbs, go back and maybe listen to last week's.
Yeah, this one's going to be.
This is going to be us talking about what we're doing this week. Probably a little bit of video games and a lot of reader mail. So it's going to be a little funky.
It'll probably be a short one too.
Yeah. Or it won't.
I guess there's no point saying that because you can look at the file right now. So pretend I didn't
It's also
say
probably called episode 72, a weird one or something like that.
or look at this file right now.
But
now that we've said that, now we've said this won't be. God, okay, go.
of the I was saying, speaking of the international.
Oh, speaking of the
a
international.
real game.
What did you think of the Dota stuff that I just showed you? I just showed Jake the sort of
What did you
showed Jake
what did
the
you
Dota
think
stuff
of the
that is.
Dota stuff I just showed you?
Well, I was trying to have a conversation, then I realized that nobody would know what I was.
Oh,
talking
it was
about.
interesting.
Oh, good. Okay, next question.
Yeah, so Sean loaded up the Dota 2 client, which has been, I guess, updated with new UI. And it was really crazy. I had not seen any of this stuff until you showed it to me. And it's funny because, I've loaded up Dota 2 a few times and played it with you, a couple times and myself a couple times. And I've never been a huge fan of the main screen
It's
UI.
changed a couple times, but
It
it's
has
never
changed a couple
been
times,
it's never been super sweet.
But the stuff you showed us today is awesome. And that's a cool thing about a game being in beta that's legitimately in beta and not just kind of stress test and then release. Like they're obviously improving that stuff and it's really cool.
Right, from when Dota, when the Dota 2 beta first showed up to now, at least the front end stuff has gone leaps and bounds. It's insane.
And the most impressive thing was that and I had no idea this existed, but you loaded up, just I guess because I haven't run the client in the last week or whenever, and you loaded up the preliminaries for the International, which is the big Dota 2 tournament that Valve was running concurrent with PAX this weekend. And we were able to just jump into those matches as spectators in real time and move the camera around, jump from player to player, turn on one of multiple different commentary tracks in different languages.
Yeah.
You can look at a whole different range of real-time stats it was amazing.
You can also,
really
like,
crazy.
if you want, you can limit the fog of war that you're seeing to just one team or the other, so you can sort of simulate being on one team and see what's going on.
Or a particular player's view, or one of the commentators. You can simulate.
Yeah, there's an
viewing.
auto-directed camera that tries to find interesting stuff, or you can track the actual camera movements of whoever is commentating that you're listening to. Or, for no reason at all, you can listen to the Eastern European commentator while watching the North American commentator's mouse movements, just to really make it horrible.
And it's interesting because I spent a long time, Nick and I both got really, really into pro StarCraft 2 matches. And I think Nick might still watch some of that stuff. I'm not sure. I've been out of it for a while now, but I love just watching the streams of, a pro StarCraft 2 match with the commentator controlling the camera and just showing everything. And it's just a straight up video feed. And I love that you can do that within the Dota 2 client. But then if you want to also just quickly take a peek at something else, you can do that because it's just the actual game that is running in your own client.
Yeah, it's great
locally.
that it has the full sort of directed, literal thing that would be streamed out on, as well as everything else.
But you can bust out of it and just look at it. It's just, the whole thing's really impressive. It's really great. And
Dota 2, you can bust out of it.
You can watch these while the matchmaking is trying to find you a game. It's just really well thought through and really impressive.
That queue stuff was super impressive of just, you're waiting 5 minutes to join a server? Okay, just go watch pro players play for a while. Like, what? That was amazing.
Yeah.
It was especially amazing for those of us who've been playing Man versus Machine in Team Fortress 2 for the last week or so, because despite the fact that Man versus Machine is clearly a lot of the systems in it are clearly influenced by Dota and by modern free-to-play stuff, the infrastructure underpinning it is not. It's really sad. I'm sure, like, my expectation is that it will probably get there. Like, once Dota goes 1.0, it would not be surprising if that team rolled back in and did the Team Fortress stuff, because Team Fortress 2, when Team Fortress 2 first came out, it was an orange box game, so it had a menu system that was cribbed from the original Half-Life 2, which is, like, archaic. It's effectively the Half-Life 1 main menu system. And then at one point, when Team Fortress, like, when it started including all the
Man stuff,
all the Manco stuff, all the in-game purchasing and all of that stuff, they overhauled the entire UI system, I think, around the time of Left 4 Dead 2. And my expectation, or maybe a little after that.
Yeah, it was around then. It was because we were working on Poignant.
My feeling on that is probably that Team Fortress 2 was the test bed for all of the stuff that the Dota team then used as the very beginning of the test bed for their stuff that used all the
item purchases.
all the inline Steam integration. And then they've now jumped ahead of that. But oh my God, it's really sad and frustrating to be playing a game from the same studio, but from clearly a different team trying to do the same thing, where, like, you want to play Man versus Machine? Do nothing for 10 minutes.
I think it just reflects. You were saying earlier, or I think Sean maybe was saying, why are these from the same company and yet one of them is so far ahead of the other? And I think it's a matter of just priority. Well, it's different people, but I think it's more specifically just a matter of priority. I think that Valve knows that in order to, like, the Team Fortress, the space that Team Fortress 2 competes in is not actually very competitive. Yeah. As there's not tons of other games that really specifically aim to and achieve the same thing that TF2 does, where there are many games that are very successful, that are all operating within the same Dota, within the same Lord's management sphere as Dota 2. And they know that one of the key things there is being sort of the canonical professional version of that paradigm. And it
was well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, whereas TF2 is like the opposite of that. Like,
right.
I mean, is there even a pro TF2 scene at all? I don't even think there is much of one to talk
There's
to
more
about.
Than not one, but there's nothing to the same degree.
Right. It doesn't seem like it has a lot of mind share.
No. But it was funny looking at the Dota 2 UI just as someone who's designed a lot of game front ends at this point, which is weird. But that game basically just has, I think, every game UI designer's wish list active inside of it, where it's like, it's got the pixel precise, just super crisp looking stuff, but then at the same time, you're like, oh, and then I can learn about my characters. Ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. Inline YouTube players of all these things. Right. Oh, and then let's just see what this character model looks like, spinning the guy around, like at the same time as the YouTube's playing, at the same time as the asynchronous, you're waiting in the lobby thing is ticking off in the background, at the same time as you can go over. Like, it was crazy to look at all that stuff.
But it didn't feel overly, like the way describing that, it sounds chaotic.
No, but the thing about it was all just, it's all very clean and professional. I imagine looking at it, a lot of game UI designers are going to look at the current state of the Dota 2 stuff and just go, this is the thing that I always ask for, but no one ever actually cares enough to make. So it's like at Valve, someone cared enough to make it, and they made it, which is the upside of Valve insanity.
Right.
Is if someone does actually say, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to dedicate my life to this for a year, it'll probably actually ship and not get undercut by weird prioritization stuff.
Right.
Although also, as you said, for Dota 2, it probably is a high priority that all that stuff is there because your game is just now super sick from that aspect compared to other.
I mean, it makes it super attractive to the exact core people you want to attract to your game.
Yep, it is really cool. It was really impressive. I still don't really care about the international, but I'm glad you're going. I'm happy for you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Man vs. Machine, you seem to have changed your opinions about it, or not? I don't know.
It seemed like you did. I still don't enjoy it as much as straight TF2 by any means, but we played a few rounds at work, and I played one actual match finally all the way through of Man Up mode, which is there's one thing to say about Man vs. Machine that is both kind of annoying and I'm also kind of okay with is it has a fully free-to-play mode where I believe you play for every map you play through 7 waves of guys, but then if you pay 99 cents per sort of match type, you end up going on a Valve-hosted server where there is an additional 8th round that has a drop, which ups the difficulty more. But anyway, have mixed feelings on that because it's a little bit weird from the just free-to-play monetization bar standpoint. But actually playing a few rounds all the way through with people who had been on it, not on launch day, not after waiting in line for an hour and stuff.
Yeah.
Actual strategy started to show up, which was sort of a thing that I was feeling weird about when I first was playing it during launch weekend.
We had a full crew, 6 of us at Telltale.
And it was super fun, actually.
Yeah.
It's cool.
But the thing is like, had we not just said, to hell with it, we're just going to host our own right here in the office, because it
would have been a miserable experience.
It would have been absolutely miserable. Like, I got booted in between rounds. We were already 2 rounds in, couldn't get back in. It's just like, you can't join ad hoc in the middle of a round. You're done. And I was like, I got booted. Like, the game crashed.
Oh, no, the game didn't crash. You accidentally keybound F4 to quit.
F4 is also the
F4 is ready for new round button. So we were like, why does Sean keep dropping when he's marking himself ready to play?
That was bad.
Oh, man. That's like the guy who... in chat, it's like, oh, a really cool thing happens if you Alt F4, you get a sparkle.
Well, the thing is, someone joked about that. Then Sean's like, okay, I'm ready, F4. And he quit. And we're like, did you just press Alt F4? Are you kidding me? We're like, no, I didn't. We're like, sure you didn't. And then you came back and did it again. And we're like, are you kidding me? Is your Alt key stuck down? What is this?
I instantly went to my keybinds and went,
oh Jesus Christ.
But we hosted our own in the office, and it was really fun. I mean, I play Medic a lot, and it's a really fun match. It's a really fun match type to play Medic in. Because it feels like you're helping so much.
When you're the medic who has the Kritzkrieg, which is instead of healing people, it just gives them a ton of crits.
Yeah, they get critical hits if you when you activate it.
Yeah. That it's robot decimation, by which I mean they're reduced by 1/10.
Nice trick.
Yeah. But yeah,
pedants everywhere will be thrilled.
It's been really fun playing on servers now that people are knowing what's going on, I guess is all I'm saying, and I've been playing more of it. I've been killing a lot of goddamn robots. I love robots.
Yeah.
I mean, I love killing robots. I hate robots. Everyone's
robot,
Man versus Machine.
My robot.
Yeah. I feel like I have more to say about it, but it's not coming to me right now. So I'm done talking about Man versus Machine.
That's fine.
Everyone should play it, though.
I'm still playing FTL. I swear to God, it's so funny. I realize I'm in the same mode with FTL that I was with Binding of Isaac for the last 3 months of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And I you know what's funny is I've played almost no Binding of Isaac in 2012, even though I played that game more than any other game by probably a factor of at least 2 or 3 last year. You know, probably Skyrim being a runner-up, but probably a distant runner-up. And then I just kind of, it was like right when the new year hit. It wasn't deliberate or anything, but I just kind of.
Oh, you gave it up.
I never thought about it though. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't conscious. I just
was
realized.
It that you moved?
It was that I moved. Yeah.
It's funny how one life thing changes, and then which makes me just feel like when you're playing games like that, it goes beyond like, oh, I'm really excited to keep going in this game because there's more to see, and goes into this weird place of just sort of my life has organized itself into habituation and compulsion combined to just make you at 9:17 every night you see yourself picking up a controller to play 2 hours of this game.
Yep.
And one thing changes. You know, you get a cold.
Well, the interesting thing about, and I think the reason, at least for me, that it works so well with games like Binding of Isaac or FTL, which are they're games that are where the fine points, the order of things are randomly generated, but obviously within rule sets that you get to know.
Right.
So it's like Binding of Isaac is a lot more unpredictable than FTL because it's deliberately so. I mean, you could start that game and be totally fucked right from square one, or just be godlike right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's FTL is not quite that extreme, but you still get in this sense of getting to internalize the average kind of arc of what one of those games is.
But you know what? Sorry, I'm derailing you, but the fact that Binding of Isaac has such a wide... I was thinking about this last week, and I didn't say it. It has such a wide disparity between sort of like how powerful you are at the end of the first level, just based on the object drops and things like this, is part of what it makes it such a compelling game.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's like...
For sure.
I hate to compare it, but it's like gambling. It's like going on a sick run of craps where you're like, it just kind of happens and you're like, I'm here and it's, oh my God, look, I got all this stuff. How far can I go now? You know, like, and that part being outside of your control, married so delicately with the gameplay systems that are obviously inside of your control, makes that game just a force if it gets its hooks into you.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Did you guys read the article about the, I think it was on the Gamological Society where someone interpreted Binding of Isaac as portraying a deist perspective in which the notion of a god who sets the world in motion and then is hands off, which isn't, I don't think that's intrinsic to deism, but it was the general kind of shorthand the guy used for this view of a creator who sets the sort of physics of the world in motion and then steps away and lets the world play out. And it was, kind of in contrast to games that are very, very heavily guided by a designer where, there's just trigger volumes everywhere and everything, scripted moments and everything. You're very corralled along a path. And it was a really interesting perspective, I thought. And especially since the game obviously exists within a very overtly religious context, it was a particularly appropriate game to look at through that lens. I thought that was really interesting. But then, and I agreed with it when I read it. But then the more I thought about it, the more my opinion has changed, or over the course of a few days, my opinion changed. I still think that fundamentally the game itself is a great demonstrator of a particular game design mentality, which is that one, which is one that I think all of us have a certain amount of affinity for. I mean, Sean, I know you were talking about this recently, the notion of, just being put into a place and having just the systems coalesce to create something, really, really great. And I think that's something that we've all responded to on this podcast for sure. But what's the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it's not actually what that game is about ultimately. Like, that's the framework in which the game is designed and built. But what the game's actually about is kind of the opposite of that. It's about like an Old Testament God who is all up in your face, who is very much arbitrarily deciding who to be bestowed with grace and who just to be completely condemned. And like the whole, that's what all that shit is. Like when you were saying, you get to the end of level 1 and the disparity between whether you're just crippled or you're just set. You've just got infinite money and your guy is incredibly powerful. I mean, to me, the things that happen are so extreme that they kind of go beyond the traditional, here's a system, let it just go. And it ends up kind of actually simulating the kind of Job-like, here is a God who is he is just calling the shots in an extreme way.
Well, he chose the idea of being chosen. Yeah. Totally. No. Yeah, I think that's a really accurate reading. Because as you were describing the article that I haven't read, I found myself taking like issue with the same sort of thing. Yeah. Where I said, because there isn't really like a sort of, the hand coming off the arc, like the world is essentially the catalyzing event, for that world. And I don't think, I would argue that the Binding of Isaac doesn't have a catalyzing event like that, other than the fact that I guess you could say it's already pre-rolled all the levels you're about to run through.
Yeah, there's a seed that.
It doesn't.
But the things that happen are they, even though they are totally, even though as I say, like the article is accurate in the sense that it describes the way that Edmund Macmillan built the game, in the sense of like, if you're looking at the designer as a metaphor for a deity, then sure, that's accurate. But what he did with that rule set is not that.
Right.
Like he made okay, so I'm gonna say it, but if you look at a game like Far Cry 2 or like like Daisy, to take a more recent example for us, or any kind of really open world systemic game, the random things that happen in those games are so much more subtle. Like I don't know, like some kind of grenade rolling down a hill.
Like an incendiary device that's able to gravity
position on an inclined plane, which is then affected by gravitational force.
I wonder what would happen when that happens.
It would probably be pulled in a downward motion,
like tiny imperfections in the skin.
Yes, some call it chaos theory. But those things that happen, like the thing that we always talk about on the podcast is a bunch of individually insignificant things snowballing into an aggregate, very significant thing. And that's actually the way that life works most of the time.
Right.
There are crazy things like a big tornado that just ruins everything. I mean, there are big things in life, obviously.
We call those scripted events.
Well, they are
_.
I mean, they are actually
Hurricane
called acts
Isaac.
of God in a lot of legal language.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the bulk of what makes up most of our lives are things that are on their face fairly insignificant, but they combine with other things in our lives in ways that our life ends up being a very dramatic series of events and crazy things. But in Binding Isaac is not like that at all.
No,
it's like
not at
every individual thing that happens is like a tragedy or an incredible blessing, or I mean, it's like just catastrophe.
Right.
And so it's interesting, and that's a model that you don't actually see it very often.
No.
Usually things that are really significant like that are scripted things in most games.
Yeah.
Binding of Isaac is kind of weird in that respect.
Right.
Yeah.
The last time I saw you playing, you just walked into a room and got 99 keys, and you're like, well, you can open any door basically for fucking ever. Like,
Yep.
what?
Yep.
Yeah, that never happened to me before.
Actually, I'm going to share I don't know how this has been affected post-expansion, which I've played almost none of because it happened.
Again, I'm not playing any of the expansion content, but the game might have updated.
But
yeah.
here's a little just trick. This isn't really thematically appropriate, I don't think. Maybe it is, but if you...
is this part of the cheat code moment that we're going to start doing as a regular feature?
Yeah,
Oh, cheats from the video game pros.
Tips and tricks.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad we're actually going
If
forward
you
with that.
play as... Once you've unlocked... You unlock characters in that game when you do
I'm
certain
afraid to
things.
play with other characters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, for the tips and tricks segment, we should have a little a little sort of low key beat underneath.
right.
the
Can you do that
entire
the whole
thing?
time? 'Cause
No.
you're talking? Okay. That was a denial.
There's a character... See, this is the thing. It's been like 6 or more months since I've played... 9 months since I've played this game, so I can't even remember the names of the characters. But I think it's Kane. It might be Kane. One of the characters has higher luck than the others, and he has lower other things, but his luck is really high. And I would always play with that character because I realized if you have the character with higher luck, what you do is you find one of the casino rooms, and the casino rooms have 3 things in them. They have the guy in the middle of the room where you give him
A
penny, and he chooses a thing, and it's
He's basically he's a homeless guy. Isn't that? Oh no! Am I wrong?
he's like a little baby or kid or
He's a
something.
baby who's just like needs money for he's just got a little sign that says money on it.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
assume that he's like begging.
Yeah. And like most of the time, 2/3 of the time, you'll just a little fly will come out, and then 1/3 of the time you'll get like a key or two coins or a heart or whatever. And then also in the room there's a vending machine which you put money in, and then it just gives you nothing or something.
Oh, but that's actually a slot machine.
A slot machine.
Yeah.
Sorry, a slot machine, not a vending machine. And then there's also in the room, there's a machine where when you activate it, it takes away a half of a heart or a full heart if you're lower in the thing, and gives you money in return. So there's those 3 things. So what you do is you take the character with high luck and you go in there and you just, this works as long as you have around 20 coins or more. If you have enough money to spare, like, 20 or more coins, basically you just bounce, just bounce between the kid and the slot machine and just pump all your money into there. And with the character with higher luck, if you get a little bit lucky, you will end up with way more hearts than you need, like way more hearts than you could possibly need to actually be at full health. And so then you just go over to the machine that gives you money in exchange for health, and you just bam, 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 bang into it until you're almost dead. Go refill all your health with all the new hearts you have from those other machines, and just keep bouncing between these 3 machines basically until you have all the money you could ever want. And, you know, obviously, because it's Binding of Isaac, there's complete possibility that the very first time you touch the little kid, he'll just disappear and this won't work or anything. But if you're using Cain, I think it's Cain, the character with higher luck, I would say at least half the time this will totally.
The scheme that you put together?
No, totally. I played this game enough that this is like a very well understood system of interactions for me.
And that's this week in Tips and Tricks.
I don't know why.
That's a sweet trick.
I like that you played the game so much that you figured out, like, this game crawled up inside you. And, like...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It really it's really, really fascinating to me. Because
really
that's so outside of, like, what I know to be about you. Like, I just can't imagine you sitting there being like, oh, wait, I can just do this. I can just get coins from this guy and give him to this guy. I can just... Oh, no.
Well, that's the thing. It's not that, though. That's the thing. It's because I played the game so much that it was just over time, like... Found myself in a room, like hit the guy a few times, realized,
that makes it
some
even
extra
funnier
hearts.
to me. Just the idea of watching like a time lapse of you in front of this game over hours and hours and hours and hours, becoming a different person than I know. It's so funny to me.
Somewhere there is like a poignant YouTube video of piano just going da 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 da, and then it's just Chris like
what the sun going up and down.
Yeah, when the slot machine pays out more and more until there's just. Cain running around in a room just pushing unused hearts all over the place and then like, catching into the slot machine. Chris's eyes just sinking further and further back. Da, 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 da. Well, hair grows, gets cut, grows again, gets cut.
I should have done that. I should have taken one picture every day while playing Binding of Isaac and then turned it into a super poignant YouTube video.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Because if somebody said like, okay, it's, you know, this anytime, random time of the day. What's Chris doing right now? I'm like, Chris is sitting on public transit, reading a hardback novel, probably by an author I'm going to pretend to have heard of. That's like, you know, but then it's like, no, 9 times out of 10, it was you like in like a stained t-shirt.
It was Chris
like,
destroying piles of poo with his tears.
Yeah. It's really funny to me.
Well, and part of the reason I told that little story is because...
You mean on Tips and Tricks?
Well, part of the reason I shared that pro tip and trick with the hardcore gamers audience is because the FTL obviously is not nearly as extreme a game as Binding of Isaac in like any way. Fictionally, you know, the way the game rolls, like none of it is as just off the walls as Binding of Isaac. But there is something about that kind of game, the sort of roguelike, you know, which is like one more generation away from roguelikes, but still shared DNA.
Like Indiana Jones and his desktop adventures.
Yes, or Yoda stories.
Those are actually roguelike-likes, which is weird. But anyway.
Yeah. Before that was the like
15
phrase.
years before that was a thing to do. Anyway.
But those games are ultimate. They basically are slot machines. Even something like FTL, which is much more subdued and operates in a much tighter possibility space than Binding of Isaac does. It still is the case that you can start that game and like 4 jumps in, you've like, man, my crew is like full already. I've got an extra weapon. My ship's hasn't taken a dent yet. This is going to be a good, and you can just tell this is going to be a good run. You know, there are those, and then 3 sectors later, you're on
into
fire.
A sun or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But
you fall so fast. It's just, it is very, I mean, yeah.
It's only talking about slot machine stuff. Do you know the website Quora, the Q&A website?
Yeah.
Did you guys read the one about crane games?
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Oh, no, I didn't read it, but I saw it.
It's so great. Someone was like, why do crane games work the way that they do? Then someone was like, funny you should ask. Actually, they're just games of chance, entirely couched as games of skill. Like, crane games have, the operating manual for them just, like, out and out says... To program this so that the claw has weak grip, do this. Then make sure that it has strong grip. Like, what are the odds that you want for when the thing is actually physically capable of picking something up versus when it just kind of gums it and drops it?
Yeah,
and then it's like, how many seconds of strong grip do you want before it switches to weak grips? Like, claw games are just actually set up to create the thing that everyone's like, why am I so bad at this? Why does it pick up the teddy bear, then drop it? The answer is the fucking operator looked in the manual for how to set it up to just drop your fucking
and was
stuff.
Like, well, I think 1 out of 80 times this will be strong enough to work for 3 seconds.
I have a friend. She doesn't listen to the cast.
Like,
but she thinks she's good at these things. Oh, Stephanie. You're not listening, and you're a good friend of mine, but you're not good at these, apparently. One time, oh my gosh, we were in a bar in Hollywood, and she caught a lobster in one. like a live lobster. You put $2 in, and there was an ocean, just a bed of live lobsters in
So that's
water.
probably legitimate, though, because what are they going to do with a bunch of lobsters? Like, at the end of the day, they've got to get rid of those lobsters, right?
No. This is one that just like it's aerated, like going to Red Lobster, and the lobsters.
No,
are
I
living in a
know.
tank.
So my point is that's probably not engineered to make you fail all the time.
I don't know. It was $2, and
That's
she
like,
caught one on the first
lobsters
time.
are an expensive thing to just set up a fake. I mean, that just seems like that would be a weird thing to do.
There was a lot of people pumping money into this thing, and Stephanie walked up.
There's a lot of
and
people pumping money into those lobsters.
just caught a lobster, and then they cooked it for us, and we ate it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe
Anyway,
crane
sorry.
games.
I
Maybe
think
there's
this is
some that
real.
have microphones that wait to hear the sound of a girl's voice saying, "Oh, I'm good at these," and then it makes sure that
Just
person
the
actually
shame
gets something.
machine
Yeah.
where it's just-
Well, it'll make sure that those people don't get fully shamed.
Yeah.
Anyone who comes over and goes, "Oh, I know how these work. I'm good at this." Like, okay, regular claw strength activated.
Mega strength that actually just crushes the lobster.
I'm too good. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, how are I mean, I interrupted your point, but yeah.
I mean, that was basically it. I mean,
Jake
does
was
make me
asking.
curious how. I'm sure there's a million laws about that because there are like the kinds of slot machines where you can kind of program little bits in ahead of time that then add a tiny element of skill, I think, which makes it shadowy legal in some places. But like a crane game, you still have to guide the crane and pick it
I
up.
mean, are crane games even regulated, though?
No.
But
I doubt it.
Wouldn't you think that a crane game would potentially be regulated the same way as a slot machine when it literally is just
Yeah, but I
like,
don't think they actually are.
Yeah, I mean,
But it makes me wonder if people know that the way crane games actually work is it just decides
people
whether or not you're
clearly
physically
don't, or they
capable of
wouldn't
winning.
work.
Yeah.
Because people,
It's so crazy.
if it was common knowledge, they wouldn't. I mean,
yeah. Oh,
but this is why you listen to Idle Thumbs.
you get those video game tips
Oh,
and
yeah,
tricks.
tips
You get
and
the crane
tricks,
game
yeah.
tips and tricks. One of the tips is don't play crane games because they are programmed to, in fact, cheat you out of your money physically. But that was a crazy thing to have read.
Yeah.
We got all
Are
the
you
best
putting crane? Are you gonna put crane games on the
Yeah,
games?
games
discussed?
discussed crane. I should actually just look up like 5 popular models of those like games. Crane, Crazy Crane, Crane Game 2000. You know, Catch 'em Crane Game. That's probably what they're called.
True.
I'm patenting those.
Do you want to take a break while you look up names
Yeah,
of
let's
crane
take-
games?
Let's take a break anyway.
Okay, cool.
I'm not looking those up.
Video games.
I have to seriously just wake Jake up at 4 a.m. and like just with a knife and just something horrific, just so I can see him cry and just go, "Now we're even."
Video games.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Greg Brown.
Wait, it's not. It's actually Nancy Pelosi sent it in, right? Not Greg Brown. How'd I do?
That was really good.
John Boehner writes. Hey guys.
Wait, what is this?
Claire McCaskill says. What?
Oh, sorry. Those emails were in fact from Greg Brown, Pat Bosher, Rody from the forums, and this guy on
And
Twitter.
President Barack Obama.
President Barack Obama and Mario.
Video games.
Greg Brown writes, "Hi guys, with Polygon launching in the near future, do you guys think it's possible to be a gaming site of record without being captured by the industry? It seems in order to gain the access for complete coverage, most sites have willingly played by studio and publisher rules, becoming just another part of the media rollout for any new game. Thanks, Greg Brown."
What do you think about that, Chris? I want Chris to start because you actually have had this job.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a strong, like, the games industry exerts a really, really strong force, pulling you towards that. It's crazy how strong it is.
It's as strong as a glass Tommy gun full of tequila.
True.
Remember that?
That was a really obscure reference. It took me a second.
Oh, you got one of those from
Yes.
a game publisher
Yes.
once. Made me want to say good things about their game. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's less that it's an individual thing where you feel personally compelled to say a bunch of positive things about games all the time. I don't think it's that. It's more that you can't run a game site and not cover every press release and write up every menial thing and go to every preview that you can. Like, you just can't, as an aggregate staff, you can't do any of those
You can't
things.
avoid it if you want to stay competitive
Yeah,
with
because
everyone else.
everybody else is going to. Like, there's no way to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, that's already what you need to do just as the baseline. And then hopefully on top of that, you can also provide interesting original content and this and that. Like, it's kind of horrible. And it's,
Is there a media model that you think the game industry press should at least look at for when it comes to like getting sources and having relationships with the people who make the content and having an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty far removed from it at this point. It's been a while since I was dealing with that stuff, so I'm sure the realities are even more different now than I would have assumed. But
Right.
I mean, yeah, you should try to adhere basically to, basic journalistic standards. I mean, you should try to confirm things. You should try to get multiple corroborations. You should try, and there are people who do that. But
Right.
I mean, it's hard though, because the truth is that the single factor above every single other factor that determines whose version of a story gets the most hits is speed, and that's it. Period.
Right.
Like that's it.
Sorry,
No, go
I
ahead.
guys have so many questions. Do game journalists actually like establish credible sources and like try to get quotes off the record and try to actually dig up news? Because I don't feel because I never feel like they do.
It's the problem. I definitely personally know game journalists who absolutely do, and it's tough to establish that because then commenters just go, no, more anonymous sources, bullshit. Say some real news, which means officially confirmed news. I mean, that response happens all the time, and it's infuriating because...
Do you think it'd be easier to be a publication of record without inline reader comments?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It would
agree.
it would be easier. No one's going to do it, but yeah, I mean, it would probably be beneficial to the quality of reporting. I mean, it's when you're I saw a really interesting. I forget. Tell me if you remember me talking about this on Off Limits 4, because I may have. But there was an interesting editorial I read a while back, and it wasn't about games. It didn't have anything to do with games, but it was a political editorial, and it was about how the weird media landscape in which we live has affected partisanship. And I mean, this has been commented on lots of times with respect to the need for 24-hour news cycle, which is just fill it with opinion, fill it with whatever. That's been commented on a lot, and I think is also true. But there's also a separate thing, which is the notion of instant feedback is really, really affects the quality and the tenor of reporting and commentary. Because if every single time you're putting something up, you're instantly getting a bunch of knee-jerk responses from people who have a certain if you're on for example a cable news network, the kind of instant feedback you get on Twitter and via email and from people calling your station and from every possible, I mean, people read Twitter responses on the news now just as part of what, things like that. When you're getting all that feedback constantly, especially if you're working for a publication that tends to be allied or tends to sympathize more to a certain point of view, one direction or the other, it's really hard to be out there and broadcasting or writing into that space where you're getting all that feedback without wanting to appeal to it. Because I know this, having obviously written the things I wrote about in the game press obviously were less important than the things that go on in the political stage of the world. Obviously,
but people's opinions on those things were no less intense. Exactly.
And it's really, really difficult. When you write for a site that is read by millions of people, and when you write something, you just instantly, less than a minute after publishing this thing that you might have taken you weeks to source or to think about and edit and to refine an opinion on or to corroborate. Things that can take you anywhere from hours to weeks to compose, and you put it out there, and literally faster than someone could have possibly read the thing, there are articles of people instantly agreeing or complaining loudly. It really affects you. It's hard to not let that shape the way you do things, whether it be wanting to get the approval of those people, or whether it is to get more outrageous because you find the best way to deal with it is just to soak it up, or whether it be to mollify just kind of subdue the things you say in the hopes that you won't get any extreme reaction. These aren't conscious things. These are just long-term slow processes that happen, and it's really hard to ignore. How do you ignore thousands of other actual fellow human beings responding to the thing you write instantly, loudly, just en masse? It's a really, really difficult thing.
When you look back at the work that you did at Gamma Sutra and Shack and stuff like that, do you see something where you're like, I let it get to me in that article?
It's hard to say. I don't know if I can think of individual cases. I'm sure there were, but I can definitely recall general states of mind. You know, like thinking of like a particular article that's hard at this point, years removed.
Right, of course.
But I definitely went, especially at Shack News, which was my first paid job as a writer. That by Gama Sutra, I feel like I'd kind of just lived in it for a while.
Gama Sutra
but
was just like you noticed that the bigger you made Bobby Kodak's face, the more sort of perturbed the comments were. So you continued to make his face bigger.
But especially for the first couple of years at Shack News, it really affected me a lot. Like I remember, if I think back now, I would go through these broad phases as a writer where I would write stuff that was much more opinionated, and then I would write stuff that was much more kind of safe and kind of objective and bland, and then I would write things that, you know, like, and then we're in the, and I definitely was affected by it because it's hard not to be. And I assume if you're writing for a site like Kotaku, which is orders of magnitude bigger than any site I've ever written for, I can imagine you've got to either just totally tune it out, or you just end up writing exactly what your audience wants because you hear from them constantly. And how do you not, as a writer who is writing things to be read, how are you not influenced by that? I can't imagine.
It's funny that we're only talking about this in the context right now of the audience, whereas Greg's question was about publishers. But I think that all that stuff is cyclical because I think the audience at this point more or less wants to go to your site.
Yeah, I was going to ask you even another question. It's even was even further
Sorry
removed.
for taking so long on
Oh,
that.
no.
I'm stoking this fire because I'm really, really curious about that stuff. You know what? If I keep asking you questions, it's quickly just going to become the Chris's career as a writer retrospective, which is something I wouldn't mind doing if we could get you and Nick
Not
and
right now, but yeah,
I think maybe even Evan, who's currently doing it, all in the same cast or something. I would find that fascinating because there was writing that was game writing, I think, done by you guys, like in very specific instances that was like fantastic. That was just like really good work, and it's like I would point to some of the things that you and Nick especially have written to say, wow, if that was the baseline for something like for any outlet that exists right now, I would probably read a lot of that stuff.
You would read Nick Brecken as embedded journalist in EVE Online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is some of the best.
It really is some
Not
of the
even
best
game writing, just
I wonder if that article's
Some of
still
the
up
best
on
feature
Shack.
I have it. I saved it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I found it, and then Nick sent me another version of it that
like
he
a
had.
formatted version.
Yeah, so it's sitting in my email somewhere.
Yeah, all I was going to say is you were talking about writing to the audience into sort of what they want, but I think that the audience that reads gaming sites often, like, they'll want your opinion in a review and kind of just to hear exactly what they're being asked to listen to by the people who are making games. Like when you said people will put stuff up from an anonymous source or they'll get real information, if the first comment is then loudly asking for a confirmation from a publisher, like,
Right.
okay, then what's the point of actually
it's so funny to
investigating
me.
anything?
It's so funny because it instantly
Sean
does,
melts into his chair.
because there's no way to have. I mean, I'm just reiterating your point, but I think maybe we're looking at it wrong. Maybe there's no way to have the conversation without saying like, what do the people who read these sites want? You know, and I think that gets sort of like distilled down to a really sort of like self-fulfilling.
Well,
like,
that's a crappy attitude to have anyway. That's
Yeah.
like asking what do gamers want when you're making a game. You
Yeah.
should never
Yeah.
fucking ask
It's
that question or you're an idiot. So I take it back
it's impossible
entirely.
to answer.
you know, and but I mean, it kind of boils down to the way that we answered a question last week, where I feel like my answer is very similar. Where is it possible? I have to believe that it's possible. Like it's important for me just as a human being to believe that people can do this.
And I would look at a site like Rock Paper Shotgun as a really great example of a site that, I mean, they do a lot of just this sort of rote stuff, but they seem to adopt the proper tone, at least most of the time for me. They seem to recognize how silly a lot of the just post this thing from a press release is thing, but they're not usually like super snarky and acerbic about it. Mm-hmm. Like they seem to strike a really good tone of just realism and good humor that I appreciate. Like it's not cartoonish, but it's also not just nothing.
Right.
I really appreciate that site.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, Brown.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg Brown. Robert Simmons writes, "Hey, Thumbs. Listening to you talk about astronauts' views of the Earth just made my day. Childlike wonder is cliched, but I could hear it when you talked about views of Earth from space. My job is to create pictures of Earth with NASA satellite data, and sometimes it feels like people just don't get it. You do, thanks. Rob Simon, Manresa on the forums. P.S. Here's some links you might enjoy. And then he has links to every astronaut photograph ever taken of Earth's full disk and time-lapse photos of Earth from the space station, many at night. So we should probably put those in the blog. So that's the only reason I read this email, so we remember to put this in the blog.
Got to include the mandatory space segment in every episode of Battle Thumbs.
Did you see that post about why there aren't any good pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon?
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was really good.
So good. The fact that Neil Armstrong just chopped Buzz Aldrin's head off in one of those photos,
Yeah, and, like,
then NASA had to
Sounded really dramatic.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah, there's that picture that
Did
just
you guys
cuts
hear
off.
about
he
how
decapitated Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, and then NASA had to Photoshop, or they airbrushed a new Buzz Aldrin head onto him.
And then he was executed like 3 days ago?
Yeah,
Wow.
for killing Buzz Aldrin.
Well, yeah, but that
on the moon.
Buzz Aldrin's head is still on the moon. That's
How
why
you know that
I think Buzz
America's
Aldrin-
been
yeah.
there.
So you know that America's been there. Buzz Aldrin's head on a
What's
pike.
weird is that his hair never waves in the wind.
Oh, that's made on a soundstage in Nevada.
Yeah, exactly.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for that. It's really crazy to me when we find out that people actually have jobs that touch such like important things.
That's the main reason I read this.
That's really
To find that
cool.
people have
Oh, it's a
jobs
guy
that
who does
touch
a
the
cool
moon.
thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we obviously have a ton of revelry for that stuff, and it is a super bummer that Neil Armstrong died, and he spoke at either my commencement or my girlfriend's commencement in college. She was a year ahead of me, but I saw him
Weird that
speak.
You don't know.
I just can't remember. One of us had the mayor of Los
Right.
Angeles, and one of us had Neil Armstrong.
That's fair.
And I was at both within the same 12-month period, and I
that's
can't
fair.
remember.
Yeah.
But
That's a like
you know what's
one of us had the
crazy?
mayor of LA and one of us had Neil Armstrong.
I know, fucking bullshit, right? He spoke for like 25 minutes and never mentioned the moon once.
Did he at least close it with "P.S. Moon" and then like drop the mic?
He's like, anyway, go forth and enjoy your adulthood. And then went to the moon.
I was on the moon.
It was on the moon. It was red.
Yeah. He had "fuck yeah" the moon actually on his back of his
He turned
doctoral
around and
capes.
walked away, and then you just saw a big picture of the moon.
In your lives, after graduating from this fine university, you will go on to do great things, no doubt, and use the skills you have learned in these hallowed halls. But you'll probably never go to the moon. Buzz Aldrin, out.
Buzz Aldrin. Neil Armstrong.
Aldrin is Armstrong.
Forget I said anything.
Armstrong
Then he
is.
disappears.
He jetpacks out of there to the moon, where he lives
Yeah.
with Buzz Aldrin's frozen head.
It doesn't need to be frozen. Just sits on the moon.
It's cold out there.
It's cold there.
It's cold
though.
in space.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, in space, no one can hear Buzz Aldrin's severed head scream. Just didn't know if you knew
In
that.
space, no one can hear Armstrong's weird, endless midnight rantings to Buzz Aldrin's severed head. Except for the guys in Mission Control.
Because his mic
They're
still
really
works.
tired of it.
Incisive casts and contrasts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Armstrong.
Video games.
It's August 29th, 2012, and join us at PAX for Idle Thumbs Podcast Live Rising, a tribute to fallen astronaut Neil Armstrong. Friday, August 31st at 10:30 a.m. in the Pegasus Theater at the Sheraton Hotel, 3rd floor in Seattle.
This is... I'm sorry. Well, we can cut that so you don't have to do it. That was amazing. Good job.
Seattle, Washington. United States, Earth. Near the moon.
Space.
Space. God.
Oh, man, maybe that's what it should be.
In Seattle, Washington, America, Earth, space.
What has happened to this podcast in the past 45 seconds?
Got good finally.